Hello, MySpace. My name is Ben Barnes from the Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. Welcome to the Black Curtain screening. I really hope you enjoy the film.
Nice to meet you, Ben.
Nice to meet you too.
How are things going?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, very good. On the way here, I went past a few buses and your face was beaming out. So what's it like? What's it
Face
feel
like the back of a bus.
That's not what I meant.
My friends are currently saying that's their new favourite.
But what's it like to be Prince Caspian and see your face everywhere like that?
It's great to be Prince Caspian in the films. It's terrifying to see yourself on buses and billboards, and you never get used to it. I think, luckily for me, in a month's time, you won't be able to find one for love or money because the next thing will come along. But it's great. I mean, it's flattering, but it's very, very strange.
Well, to take you back to the beginning, how did you become involved with this film in the first place?
I was sort of, going about my daily business as an actor, doing a play in London, and the casting director came to see the play and asked if I'd like to audition for the film. I'd done a few, smaller film roles before, but nothing on this scale. And I did the screen test, and a few weeks later I had the part. And a month after that, I was in New Zealand doing my horse training and sword training. And
wow! So had you read the books as a child?
Yeah, I read them when I was 8, and there was an accompanying TV series in 1989 which I watched and was completely magic to me. So to be part of kind of telling these stories for the next generation and hopefully giving them a similar experience was a real thrill.
Sure. Well, what did you remember of Prince Caspian then from your kind of childhood?
The character or the book?
The character.
I mean, I have to admit, he wasn't a character that I remembered as vividly as some of the others. I think partly because he actually is a fairly ambiguous character. He's neither sort of particularly vulnerable nor bullish. He's actually a very real character, which I think is, as an adult, he's a very interesting character to play because he's very human. He's an orphan. He's a kind of quite a reluctant hero. Doesn't feel like he's ready to be a king or deserves to be have responsibility or be in the limelight. So I think that kind of makes him very real, which is kind of interesting for me to portray.
And he's also quite an active guy, and you mentioned that you had to learn various skills. So what was it you had to study before you went on set?
I mean, the first thing was the horse riding. Caspian spends a lot of time on the horse. The film opens with a sort of car chase on horses, through forests, rivers, and that was one of the first things we shot. So I really didn't have much time. So I was doing 6 or 7 hours a day on the horses. And then through shooting, we just did the sword fighting, training and choreography, and then the dialect coaching as well for the Telmarine accent. So there was a lot to get on with.
What was it? Sorry, the Telmarine accent.
Telmarine. The Telmarines are the race
sure.
That have taken over Narnia, and sort of my evil uncle Miraz has basically usurped the throne, and so the Telmarines are made up of a sort of Mediterranean race. So we've got lots of fabulous Italian actors, Mexican actors, Spanish actors, Belgian actors, and one from London.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
The only one. Yeah.
And can you tell me a little bit about the stunts? What were the toughest things to do, because it's so strenuous what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just fun, though. A lot of it is great, particularly with the sword fighting stuff. So the horse stuff can get kind of frustrating because obviously they're living, breathing, conscious animals, and sometimes they just do whatever they want, which can be frustrating if you're trying to, make them act, basically. But there was some great stuff, riding through the forests or riding through rivers, things like that, which are just really, really exhilarating. But sometimes takes a few goes.
Were there any days when the director would ask you to do something and you'd be like, are you sure?
There was a scene near the end where I sort of fall backwards off this sort of cliff, basically. I fall into this pit. And they built up these crash mats almost all the way to the top, so I only had to flip, once or twice and then land on these crash mats. But still, just the thought of sort of throwing yourself backwards off this ledge, it's mind over matter, And then they take away most of the mats and get a stunt guy to do the same thing, and it's just extraordinary to see, what these guys can do. But
it's a lot there on
you
screen.
you come out the other side a better person, I think.
And what was it like joining all the guys, the cast and crew from the first film? Because I guess they must have been quite a close-knit bunch, was it?
Yeah, certainly with the director and the 4 actors who played the Pevensies, very much like a sort of family unit. So, they gave me a bit of stick, when I first got there, and played a few pranks on me and stuff. And but once they realised that I wouldn't retaliate too violently, they sort of embraced me as part of the group.
Good stuff. And where does the story go from here? Because I know there's Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
Yeah.
Is that something that's going to happen, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to start shooting beginning of next year. It's it's 3 or 4 years later in Narnia, 1 year later for the Pevensies in the real world, and Caspian is helming this voyage on a ship. It's a very different genre of film again. It's a sort of roving adventure story, as opposed to this one, which is a sort of drama, comedy, action film, and particularly interesting, I think, for Caspian, because at the end of this film he says he's not sure that he's ready to be the king, and then we see him several years later having been ruling the land for that time. So it'd be interesting to see where he's at with that.
Yeah, great. Well, I look forward to seeing it.
Cheers.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.